something goes by. Train, maybe. I don't know, I can't tell. It literally sounds like a lawnmower. Let me know how the audio sounds. I don't normally film this far away from my mic, but I don't want to hold it because most of the time when I hold it, or maybe I will hold it, I don't know, but I feel like most of the time when I hold it, I wind up like shaking it around a lot, and it's like bumping it a lot, and I feel like that's bad. So I'm trying a little bit farther away, but that means I'm not as close up on the mic for all of the up close whispers. So let me know. We'll do this like as a little experiment. If it's bad, I'll never do it again. But if it's okay, then let me know and maybe we can do this a little bit more. I'm almost choked. I've got some tea here with me. This is, it's sleepy tea. I think it's chamomile and lavender. And it's delicious. I'm filming in a little bit different, totally different actually, of a setup than I ever have before because my tripod is in my car and it's nighttime and I'm not about to go outside and get it. I can't show you because I'm using my phone as like a viewfinder for the camera, but you're propped up on a laundry basket and the clothes are piled like double the height of the basket, and then my camera's sitting on top of that, and then there's a bottle of hydrocortisone propping up the lens so it like reaches a little bit higher. So that's what we're working with, and then everything else is on my bed including my tea. So fingers crossed that doesn't spill. I think we'll be okay. But I wanted to film with this background because I have like all of my candles on my bookshelf over here and it's super cozy, I think. And like you can see all the books and whatever. And I feel like normally you can't really see that much. You might be able to see it sometimes like when I'm sitting at my desk filming, which is like over here. But again, no tripod, so I couldn't film there, and I just kind of wanted to sit in bed tonight and film and be cozy. So that's what we're doing. Again, let me know what you think of it. I'm gonna scooch over just a little bit actually. Okay. I think that's better. So, oh, by the way, hi, my name is Carmen. Welcome or welcome back to my ASMR channel. I did this video last year also, and it was fun. I just think like the vibes of these types of videos, of like reading spooky story videos, are just the best. I feel like they're just ultimate fall and like cozy warmth. So I wanted to do it again. If you didn't see my one last year though, I'll link it down below and in the little tag up above. But I do it a little bit differently than most other spooky story videos because I'm a massive scaredy cat, like the most paranoid person ever, and I can't handle the anxiety from spooky stories, like actually scary ones. So we're doing mildly spooky stories, aka basically like kids' scary stories that you would hear in like grade school. Because that's all that I can handle, quite honestly. It's kind of funny though because I watch true crime ASMR all of the time. I don't watch it at night though, but I watch it all the time. But somehow like that's comforting to me somehow. But then I cannot do scary movies. I can't sit here and even read like scary stories to you. Whatever. So I need to find some first. with 6 other people, and yet every time I hear like a slight noise, I'm like, anyway, let's take another sip of tea real quick. Before we get started reading these, I wanted to let you know that I just made a TikTok. So if you have TikTok, go follow me on there. It's linked down below. It's at Carmen's ASMR 1. Again, it'll be linked down below. I also have a Patreon that it currently is set up like a tip jar, but very soon I will be launching that with built out tiers, and there will be content preloaded on there, so stay tuned for that. I have an Instagram that you should go follow me on, and and if you're not subscribed, then freaking subscribe. Also, I want to show you my nails. I just did them. I didn't have time to do any like art on them yet, so I'll probably update them in a week, like add to them, but I'm kind of loving them right now. They are short, like almond brown, I guess almond more, black nails, just plain black, but I did the round shape. I've never had my natural nails like almond shaped before, so I wasn't sure how it would turn out. But I think it turned out pretty good. I don't know if it's focusing. There we go. But yeah, they're simple. Like, they're simple, but I'm obsessed with it. So that's what we've got going on right now. And that's all. That's all of my chit chat for today. Let's go ahead and freaking read these. Okay, so the first story, I will link this article that I found the stories from down below also, by the way. But the first story is called Golden Hand. This one, I'm pretty sure there's a Greek myth that's similar to this story, but Golden Hand. He never paid much attention to the neighbors living on his city block until the day the pretty middle-aged widow moved in 2 doors down from him. She was plump and dark with sparkling eyes, and she always wore dark gloves on her hands, even indoors. He went out of his way to meet her, and they often bumped into each other in the street and stood talking. When he asked her about it, she grinned coquettishly and told him that she had lost one hand a few years back and now wore a golden hand in its place. In that moment, a terrible lust woke in his heart, not to possess the lady herself, but to possess the solid gold hand that she wore under the long black gloves. He courted the widow with every stratagem known to him: flowers, trips to the theater, gifts, compliments, and he won her heart. Within a month, they were standing in front of a minister. Within a month, they were standing in front of a minister, promising to love one another until death parted them. Within another month, he was a widower and had buried his ailing wife in the local cemetery without her golden hand. It had been so easy. Oh my God. A slow poison administered daily to resemble a wasting disease. No one, not his wife, not the family doctor, not their neighbors, suspected murder. And the night after the funeral, he slept with the golden hand under his pillow. clouds covered the moon, and the wind was whistling down the chimney and rattling the shutters of the townhouse. He was deeply asleep when the door to his room slammed open with a loud bang, and a wild wind whipped around the room, scattering papers and books and clothing and table coverings every which way. That was a little tongue twister. He sat up, startled by the sudden noise, and his pulse began to pound when he saw a greenish-white light bobbing slowly into the room. Before his eyes, the light slowly grew larger, taking on the shape of his dead wife. She was missing one arm. "Where is my golden hand?" she moaned, her dark eyes blazing with red fire. "Give me my golden hand." He tried to speak, but his mouth was so dry with fear that he could only make soft gasping noises. The glowing phantom moved closer to him. Her once lovely face twisted into a hideous green mask. "You stole my life, and you stole my hand. Give me back my golden hand," the dead wife howled. The noise rose higher and higher, and the phantom pulsed with a strident green light that smote his eyes, making them water. He cowered back against his pillows, and the hard shape of the golden hand pressed against his back. And then he felt the golden hand twitch underneath him as the mangled green phantom that had been his wife swooped down upon him, pressing his face against the pillow in a suffocating green cloud. She's coming for revenge. He tried to scream, but it was cut off suddenly by a terrible pressure against his throat, cutting off his breath. The world went black. The next morning, when the housemaid came into the room with her master's morning cup of tea, she found him lying dead on the floor with the golden hand clutched around his throat. Oh my goodness. I mean, serves him right for stealing it and murdering his wife. Next one. This is called Underpants. There was a man who always wore 2 pairs of underpants. When he died and when his wife was laying him out to be buried, she only put 1 pair of underpants on him. After the funeral, the old man's ghost kept coming back to the house. Every night, at the stroke of midnight, the old man would walk right through the front door. His wife was so scared that she moved away, but the ghost found her. She moved again, and she kept on moving. She had moved 4 or 5 times, but no matter where she went, her husband just kept on coming back. Eventually, the woman couldn't stand it anymore, and one night when her husband's ghost came walking in, she asked him, "Why do you keep coming back? What in the name of God do you want from me?" He looked at her for a long time, and finally he said, "Honey, please give me another pair of underpants." So she gave him another pair of underpants, and to this day he has never been seen again. Short and cute. I mean, hey, the man just wants his undies. Okay, the next one is called Love Test. Years ago, in Japan, there was a young girl who lived with her parents in a remote village. She was very attractive, with long black hair, pale white skin, and stunning oval eyes. Young Japanese men would come from miles around it just to ask her on a date. As word of her good looks spread around the area, more and always seen running away, screaming in terror. None of them would ever talk about what had happened, and all refused to meet her again. Before long, the young men stopped coming to visit, and her parents began to despair that their daughter would never find a husband. Rumors began to spread around the village. People said that there must be something wrong with the beautiful girl. Some people wondered if she had a horrible personality. Others were of the opinion that she had some kind of hideous deformity that was driving all of the boys away. Her parents were mystified. They couldn't understand why so many young men were terrified by their daughter. She was always so sweet, gentle, happy, and even-tempered. She studied hard in the evenings and never complained when her mother asked her to do chores around the house. One day, as her father was out in the garden mowing the lawn, a young man came walking up the garden path. "What do you want?" the old man asked. "I'd like to date your daughter," said the young man. The father was delighted. "Come right in," he said, and he happily introduced the young man to his beautiful daughter. The girl seemed very shy and never looked directly at the young man. She spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper, and whenever he spoke to her, she blushed bright red. Despite this, the young man seemed very taken by her beauty and asked her out on a date. She accepted and accompanied him to the door when he was leaving. "Not now," she whispered. "Come back at midnight and be careful not to knock too loud or you'll wake my parents up." The young man was surprised, but he came back that night and tapped softly on her bedroom window. Suddenly, the window opened and the girl climbed out. "Before I go out with you, you have to promise me something," she said. She whispered. The young man nodded eagerly. "I want you to take a love test," she said. "If you really love me, you will pass the test. Promise me that if you fail the test, you will never tell another living soul what went on tonight." The young man couldn't imagine what the beautiful young girl had in mind, but he agreed to remain silent. With one hand on his heart, he said, "I solemnly swear that I will never breathe a word of it to anyone." "Okay, follow me," said the girl. "Where are we going?" the young man asked, but the girl didn't reply. It was a dark night, and the moon was hidden behind a layer of clouds. In Japan, they say that it is on this type of night that ghosts wander the earth. The two people could hear the ominous sound of dogs howling in the distance. They slipped quietly through the deserted village streets until they came to the woods. The girl hurried down a dark, overgrown path, and the young man had to run to keep up with her. The path was bordered by enormous trees that loomed over them like huge monsters. Eventually, they reached an old cemetery. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting a pale light, and the young man could see the old gravestones covered with moss and creeping vines. The girl's night dress was billowing in the breeze. She was standing at the edge of a grave that looked quite fresh. As the young man watched, she picked up a rusty old spade and began to dig, flinging clumps of dirt everywhere. only candy, he growled. I thought you were just like me. With that, he grabbed the shovel. What? With that, he grabbed the shovel and started to dig another grave. When he unearthed a coffin, he broke it open and began devouring the dead body inside. Then it was the girl. This time it was the girl who ran away screaming. Okay, ew. Well, she dodged a bullet there. Okay, we've got 3 more stories. The next one is called Dem Bones. And I guess this is the shorter version. There's like a longer version of it, but you have to like buy the book to read it. So, my granny was told this. My granny was told as a child that Captain Kidd, knowing the law was on his trail, traveled up the Jersey coast looking for the perfect spot to bury his stolen booty. Okay. As he found it near a grove of gnarled, wind-swept pines on Sandy Hook. Oh, and he found it near a grove of gnarled, wind-swept pines on Sandy Hook. One moonless dark night, the adventure galley slid silently into harbor at Sandy Hook, before the wondering eyes of 2 hidden watchers. A crew of scurvy buccaneers armed with cutlasses and pistols had rowed boatload after boatload of heavy chests into a shore. That was a long sentence. I feel like I read it, but I didn't comprehend that for a second. They were accompanied by a tall, proud man with red whiskers and a cocked hat that the watchers recognized at once as the bold leader, Captain Kidd. The captain led his men away from the shore, and they disappeared with them into the grove of pines. The pirates were gone a long time, long enough, according to those who watched, to bury any amount of treasure. They came away before dawn and rowed back to the adventure galley and sailed into the last vestiges of the dark night. Of course, the eager watchers kept their knowledge quiet and scurried down to the pine grove a few days later, armed with lanterns and shovels. But nary a gold coin they found, and in frustration, they shared their tale with other good folks in the region. Is it folk or folks? I feel like folks just sounds weird. The story says folks, though. They shared their tale with other good folks in the region. After that, there was not a night when the pine grove did not see someone digging fervently with a shovel. After a few decades of this, the pine grove gave up the ghost and died away completely. By my granny's time, there was nothing left of the spot save a few stunted trees, some wind-swept grass, and on certain dark nights, Dem Bones. Dem Bones are the skeletal crew of waists are belts full of pistols and long cutlasses. The biggest of them bones, the one that is probably the first mate, has a skeletal parrot perched on his shoulder. Dem bones carry heavy trunks full of treasure onto the shore and scatter them all around the place where the pine grove once stood. Then the pirate crew hauls out kegs and kegs of whiskey, and one of the skeletons takes out a fiddle. A phantom fire is lit on the sand, and them bones start such a rowdy singing and dancing that the noise would wake the dead, if they weren't already awake. When they are exhausted from the dancing, the glowing skeletons collapse on the sand and start telling stories about the ships they have captured and the treasure they have amassed. Some of them bones open the big trunks and take out jewels and ropes of pearls and adorn themselves. Others toss gold coins back and forth as if they were a child's ball. At the darkest part of the night, just before dawn, them bones pack up the trunks and row back to the ship of shadows. One by one, the glowing skeletons disappeared into the hold, and the ship draws anchor and sails away. I want to be not really, but I want to be a part of them bones. They sound like a fun group. Whiskey, fiddle, dancing, like, sign me up. Okay. The next story I read last year, but it's a classic and it's my favorite spooky story, so. It is called Yellow Ribbon. Jane wore a yellow ribbon around her neck every day, and I mean every day, rain or shine, whether it matched her outfit or not. It annoyed her best friend Johnny after a while. He was her next door neighbor and had known Jane since she was 3. When he was young, he had barely noticed the yellow ribbon, but now they were in high school together, and it bothered him. "Why do you wear that yellow ribbon around your neck, Jane?" He'd ask her every day, but she wouldn't tell him. Still, in spite of this aggravation, Johnny thought she was cute. He asked her to the soda shop for an ice cream sundae. Then he asked her to watch him play in the football game. Then he started seeing her home. Okay. And come the spring, he asked her to the dance. Oh. Okay, please tell me why. Then he started seeing her home. Like, I thought that meant they started hooking up. Not like he started walking her home. Okay, never mind. That's what that look was. I was like, okay, Johnny. Anyway, and come the spring, he asked her to the dance. Jane always said yes when he asked her out, and she always wore a yellow dress to match the ribbon around her neck. It finally occurred to Johnny that he and Jane were going steady, and he still didn't know why she wore the yellow ribbon around her neck. So he asked her about it again, and yet again she did not tell him. Keep those boundaries. "Maybe someday I'll tell you about it," she'd reply. Someday. That answer annoyed Johnny, but he shrugged it off because Jane was so cute and fun to be with. Well, time flew past as it had a habit of doing, and one day Johnny proposed to Jane, and she accepted. They planned a big wedding, and Jane hinted that she might tell him about the children asked him about it, he'd always hushed them, and somehow none of the kids had dared ask their mother. Jane gave Johnny a sad look and said, "Johnny, you've waited this long. You can wait a while longer." And Johnny agreed. It was not until Jane was on her deathbed a year later that Johnny, seeing his last chance slip away, asked Jane one final time about the ribbon she wore around her neck. She shook her head a bit at his persistence and then said with a sad smile, "Okay, Johnny, you can go ahead and untie it." With shaking hands, Johnny fumbled for the knot and untied the yellow ribbon around his wife's neck, and Jane's head fell off. I think that one's cute. I think that one's just super nostalgic for me. I remember that story being read to me in grade school from the spooky stories to tell in the dark or something like that book. It's just it's a core memory for me. Okay, last one is called Two Heads. One day, a taxi driver received a call from a man who was staying in a hotel in the center of the city. He wanted to be picked up and transported to the airport. When the taxi driver arrived at the hotel, he had to wait more than an hour for the man to come out. Do taxis wait that long? I do not think they wait that long. Not realistic. When the passenger emerged from the hotel, he was carrying 2 large bags. I think I read this story last year also. I just realized. Anyway. He was carrying 2 large bags. Always friendly and willing to assist, the taxi driver got out and tried to help the man with his bags. To his surprise, the man refused and insisted on loading the bags into the trunk of the taxi by himself. Just then, the taxi driver noticed a horrible smell. It was the stench of rot and decay, and it was coming from the bags. When he got back into the taxi, he noticed something else that was strange. The passenger seemed very nervous, and he kept looking furtively over his shoulder. The taxi driver followed the route to the airport. On the way, the suspicious passenger asked him to stop at the corner because he wanted to make a phone call. The driver obeyed and waited patiently while the passenger got out and ran over to a nearby payphone. As he sat in the taxi, the driver could smell the terrible stench coming from the boot. The odor of decomposition was unmistakable. The nervous passenger returned and got into the back of the cab. The driver looked in the rear view mirror and noticed that the passenger was eyeing him suspiciously. By the time they reached the airport, the passenger was extremely nervous and sweating profusely. He asked the taxi driver to wait for him in the parking lot because he was worried that he may have missed his plane. Then the passenger got out of the taxi and hurried off. The taxi driver was sitting there for a few minutes when he suddenly realized that the passenger had forgotten to take the bags with him. They were still in the boot of the car. The smell was becoming so terrible that people who were passing by the taxi had to hold their noses. The driver realized that the mysterious passenger was not going to return and decided to find out what was inside the bags. He got out of the car a little break